Kia ora, nā mai ki te whare. Welcome to The House, ko Louis Collins aho. At Parliament this morning, the Governance and Administration Committee were joined by Speaker Gerry Brownlee, Parliamentary Service CE Rafael Gonzalez Montero, and Clerk David Wilson for what was part 2, albeit a month later, of the estimates hearing of the Office of the Clerk and Parliamentary Service. If you're wondering why it's the Speaker fronting up to the committee instead of a minister, well, Brownlee is essentially a de facto minister in charge of Parliament's two agencies, the Office of the Clerk and Parliamentary Service. Much of this morning's hearing was around a perceived strain on the Office of the Clerk, largely thanks to two things: the number of bill submissions trending drastically upwards, and the changes to scrutiny by select committees.
How confident are you that the current level of resources that the clerk's team have can handle, for example, increased number of reports, length of the reports, as well as being able to accommodate the increasing level of public participation in select committee processes?
Well, the greatest level of resource for any of those things is the time that MPs have to put into things. So if you think about scrutiny, then the documents are provided through not necessarily the clerk's office, but through the Auditor General. And that's then what happens to those, how they're used inside of scrutiny week is up to the members and to the committee itself. With regard to contentious bills, I think there's a real problem with the select committee structure because, you know, when you're getting significantly more submissions on pretty much all bills now than was the case some time ago, the sort of automatic allocation of 10 minutes is not always applicable, but seems to become the rule. And the second thing on that is that where you've got large numbers, it's always going to be contentious when there is a decision made by a committee to limit the number of people that they're going to hear from. And I think the Standing Orders Committee needs to have a think about how that might be better done.
Now, I know this does sound like technical behind-the-scenes Parliament stuff, but ultimately we're talking about two things that are very much in the interest of the public: transparency of government and engagement with the lawmaking process. On that latter topic, Clerk David Wilson had this to say.
I think we do have sufficient resource to deal with these things as they stand at the moment. My concern for the future is that if the numbers of submissions we're now getting for bills, which is a good thing in terms of public engagement, if that becomes the new norm, we would really struggle to deal with that on an ongoing basis. We can, deal with one or two bills that attract a huge amount of public interest. We couldn't deal with those simultaneously, though, with current resources.
So if that new norm Wilson speaks of comes into fruition, does that mean that some public submissions will fall on deaf ears because the Office of the Clerk just doesn't have the resources to deal with the increase? Well, there is mitigation on the horizon in the form of the Parliament Bill, which is currently waiting for its second reading. While not a silver bullet, the law change will enable the Clerk's office to make a case for sufficient resourcing to deal with the increased scale of submissions. So what about the changes to scrutiny? Green MP Ricardo Menendez-March was keen to hear what the Speaker and Wilson had to say regarding a perceived deficit of resources to deal with all the increased scrutiny.
Like we have heard, and that's reflected in the Social Services Committee, there is a genuine, the feedback we have received that there's a genuine trade-off that happens with increased scrutiny and ability to produce substantive reports. And so I guess that's where my question lies, around whether there are already resource constraints that prevent the amazing staff from being able to do justice to, for example, increased scrutiny that we want to have.
Yeah, but who's saying that?
Yeah, staff of the committee.
Of the committee.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is a message that's gone to all committees during this estimates round. It is a matter of priorities because there's, I think more so than previously, there is the need to weigh up where is the energy and attention of the committee and therefore the staff going to focus. And it can be spread evenly across everything, or it can focus more on areas of concern and less on others. But acknowledge if you're doubling the amount of time spent on scrutiny, there's not double the amount of resource to support that.
Other than using legislative reform like the Parliament Bill, MPs can also rejig how Parliament and its many functions work by changing its rules during the review of standing orders, which happen at the end of each parliamentary term. Brownlee, who chairs the committee, suggested this is a method for countering issues with increased strain on Parliament staff and resources.
So how to make sure we are well funded and resourced with an amazing team, but to make sure the public see the transparency and scrutiny of this place.
Well, as I made the opening comment, I think that's something the Standing Orders Committee's got to have a look at. It would not have been possible even for all MPs to read the number of submissions that were submitted on that particular bill. And as I said, the trend is that there are more submissions on all bills at the moment than has been the case in the past. So the question you're asking is the question I'm asking. And I think it's for the Standing Orders Committee of Parliament to make some decisions about that. So if you've got ideas, then I think feed them in.
Select Committee resourcing is just one of the things on what is likely to be a very long list of items brought to the drawing board when MPs propose changes to the rules of their workplace during the Standing Orders Review at the end of next year. I te whakarongo koe ki te whare. You've been listening to The House, a program made with funding from Parliament's Office of the Clerk. Mā te wā.